Erased Matriarchy. Unearthing the history of female power.
There is a very specific anxiety our culture holds about women living alone. You see it in the trope of the crazy cat lady or the hushed pity for the unmarried aunt. We treat female solitude like a failure.
Right, the spinster, the woman nobody wanted.
Exactly. But here on the Erased Matriarchy, we follow the evidence. And the evidence suggests that this pity is actually a cover for fear. We are going back to the 13th century, to Northern Europe, to a time when women created their own cities within cities. Cities just for women? They were called beguinages, and the women were the Beguines. They were not nuns, and they were not wives. They occupied a third space that, legally, shouldn't have existed. They took no vows of obedience to any man, whether a husband or a bishop.
So they were religious, but they didn't answer to the church?
They answered to themselves. They were laywomen. They lived in these walled communities. Some were huge, like the Grand Beguinage in Leuven, which still stands today. They worked. They wove cloth. They nursed the sick. They taught. Crucially, they kept their own money and property.
That sounds surprisingly modern.
It was revolutionary. If a Beguine wanted to leave and get married, she could. If she wanted to stay and study scripture, she could. They were self-sufficient, and that was the problem. See, in the medieval mind, a woman was defined by who she belonged to: her father, her husband, or the church. Precisely. A woman who belonged to no one was a loose cannon. She was a masterless woman, and the church began to panic. These women were translating the Bible to local languages. They were preaching. They were managing their own economies without male oversight. So the crackdown began.
How did they stop them?
They used the law. We need to look at the Council of Vienne. This was a massive ecumenical council held in France in 1311. This is the smoking gun. The church hierarchy gathered to discuss the Beguine problem.
They actually called it a problem?
They called it heresy, specifically the heresy of the free spirit. They claimed these women believed they were so perfect they didn't need the church's rules. But if you look at the records, it wasn't really about theology. It was about control. The council issued the decree Ad Nostrum, which effectively banned the Beguine lifestyle. So they made it illegal to be a single religious woman, unless you were locked in a convent. The message was brutal. You have two choices: submit to a husband in marriage or submit to a priest in a cloistered order. The middle ground, the independent, self-funded life, was erased.
Wow, so they forced them back into the system.
Many were forced to marry. Others were absorbed into strict orders like the Franciscans, where they lost their property rights. And those who refused? Some were burned at the stake. Marguerite Porete, a brilliant Beguine mystic, was burned in Paris just before the council met. Her crime was writing a book about the soul's freedom.
That sends a pretty clear message to everyone else.
It certainly did. It taught society that a woman without a keeper is dangerous, that she is suspect. So when you hear the word spinster today, don't think of a woman who failed to catch a man. Think of the Beguines. Think of the women who proved they didn't need men to survive, and how the institutions of the time were so terrified by that proof that they burned it down. The stigma isn't natural. It's a scar left over from the Council of Vienne.
Ignite your muse with drops of inspiration. Search Musedrops.